It was a sweltering summer afternoon. The kind of day when the city streets shimmered with heat, and even the wealthiest retreated into their air-conditioned mansions and luxury cars. But that was the day when one of the richest men in the entire state, a man known for his arrogance, his iron will, and his complete lack of empathy, was about to have his world shaken in the most unexpected way. His name was Alexander Drake, a billionaire investor. People bowed when he entered a room. His employees feared him. His rivals envied him. And his motto had always been the same: money is everything. But what Alexander never expected was that two little girls, no older than 8 years old, would challenge everything he thought he knew about life. Before we go further, let me ask you something. If you believe every child deserves a chance, no matter how poor they are, then like this video and subscribe right now. And comment below with your city and country, so we know how far our stories reach across the world. That afternoon, Alexander was riding in his black Rolls-Royce, his tinted windows shielding him from the rest of the world. As the car pulled up to a red light in a busy neighborhood, something unusual caught his eye. On the sidewalk, under the blazing sun, stood two little girls, their hair tied back in messy braids, their faces flushed from the heat. They were holding up a hand-painted cardboard sign that read, "Lemonade, 50 cent. Their stand was nothing more than a rickety wooden table, 2 old plastic cups, and a large glass jug half filled with melting ice. At first, Alexander scoffed. "Selling lemonade? How quaint," he muttered. His driver glanced in the mirror, unsure if he should respond. But then Alexander noticed something that made him lean forward. These weren't just any kids. They were twin sisters. Identical. Frail. Dressed in faded clothes that looked 2 sizes too big. But their eyes were determined, almost defiant. And as cars drove past without stopping, as passers-by laughed or ignored them, the girls didn't quit. They kept smiling, kept waving their sign, kept hoping. Alexander felt something strange, something he hadn't felt in years. A tug in his chest. He told himself it was nonsense. He told himself they were just kids. But still, he couldn't look away. Finally, he ordered his driver, "Pull over." Right there. The Rolls-Royce stopped at the curb, and when the back door opened, the sight of a man in a $5,000 tailored suit stepping out instantly turned heads. The twins froze, their little hands clutching their cardboard sign tighter. People whispered, "Is that Alexander Drake, the billionaire?" One of the girls, the bolder of the two, stepped forward and squeaked out, "Lemonade, sir? Only 50 cents. Alexander looked down at her. He could have crushed her spirit with a single cruel remark. And once upon a time, he probably would have. But instead, he asked one question. "Why?" The little girl blinked. "Why what, sir? Why are you out here selling lemonade? Where are your parents?" Her answer would change everything. The twin girls exchanged a nervous glance. Their tiny shoulders sagged, but the bolder one took a shaky breath and answered, "Our mom, she's sick, sir." Alexander frowned. "Sick? Where is she?" The second girl, her voice barely above a whisper, added, "She's at home. She can't get out of bed. We don't have enough money for her medicine." The billionaire felt something stir inside him, but he forced his expression to remain cold. "And your father?" The girls hesitated. Then the first one muttered softly, "He's gone." The weight of that single word hit Alexander harder than he expected. Gone. They didn't explain how. They didn't need to. The silence spoke volumes. Alexander's eyes swept over their little stand. The half-empty jug of lemonade, the single-dollar bill sitting in a cracked plastic cup, the girls' worn-out sneakers with holes at the toes. All around them, wealthy city dwellers hurried by, too busy or too self-absorbed to notice. Some even sneered at the twins, muttering things like, "Shouldn't kids like that be in school? Disgraceful. Begging for money on the street." The twins kept smiling through it all. They waved their cardboard sign at every passerby, even when rejection after rejection came their way. Something about their determination in the face of cruelty gnawed at Alexander. He had built his empire on ruthlessness, on never showing weakness, on crushing competition without mercy. But looking at these two fragile little girls, he felt something he hadn't in years. Guilt. He sighed and reached into his pocket, pulling out a crisp $100 bill. "I'll take a cup," he said flatly. The girls' eyes widened in disbelief. They scrambled to pour the lemonade, their tiny hands trembling as they filled a plastic cup and handed it to him. Alexander raised it to his lips, took a sip, and froze. It was warm, too sweet, barely drinkable. But as he looked down at the eager faces of the twins, their hope shining brighter than the sun itself. He forced himself to nod. "Not bad," he muttered. The twins grinned from ear to ear, clutching the $100 bill like it was the greatest treasure in the world. But Alexander's curiosity wasn't satisfied. He wanted to know more. "Where do you live?" he asked. The girls hesitated, glancing nervously at each other. Finally, the bolder one whispered, "Just down the street, sir. Do you want to see?" Alexander paused. Normally, he would have brushed it off. He had meetings, deals, a world of responsibilities. But for some reason, he nodded. "Lead the way." And so, the billionaire in his $5,000 suit followed two little girls in worn-out sneakers down the cracked sidewalk of a neighborhood he would have never set foot in otherwise. People stared. Some whispered. Some even laughed. What's he doing here? Alexander Drake, following kids? Has he lost his mind? But Alexander didn't care. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business or money. He was thinking about something else entirely. What he was about to see would shake him to his core. Quick question. If you believe no child should ever have to go hungry, drop a red heart in the comments right now. Let's see how many hearts we can fill this story with. The twins led him to a rundown apartment building. The paint peeled from the walls, the elevator was broken, and the stench of poverty clung to the air. As they climbed 3 flights of stairs, Alexander noticed how carefully the girls held his hand, almost as if afraid he'd turn and leave them at any moment. Finally, they stopped at a faded door with the number 3C barely hanging on by a nail. The older twin pushed it open, and what Alexander saw inside made him freeze. The apartment was dimly lit, the curtains drawn to block the harsh afternoon sun. The air smelled faintly of medicine and stale food. On a thin mattress in the corner lay a woman. Her skin was pale, her face gaunt, and her breathing shallow. She looked far older than she should have, like life itself had drained her strength. "Mom," the twins whispered as they ran to her side. "We brought someone." The woman weakly lifted her head, her eyes fluttering open. When she saw Alexander, confusion flickered across her face. "Who?" she whispered hoarsely. Before the girls could answer, a violent cough racked her body. The twins immediately sprang into action. One held her hand, the other dabbed at her forehead with a warm cloth. Alexander just stood there, frozen. He was a billionaire who could buy almost anything on the planet. Yet in that moment, he felt powerless. Finally, the older twin spoke softly. "Sir, the doctors said she needs medicine. But it's too expensive. That's why we sell lemonade." Alexander swallowed hard. How long has she been like this? The younger twin's eyes filled with tears. Since last winter. Some days she can't even eat. We try to make her soup, but we don't always have enough money for food either. The woman, gathering her strength, reached for Alexander's hand. Her touch was weak but deliberate. "I don't know who you are, but thank you for being kind to my girls," she whispered. "They've been through so much, more than children should ever endure." Alexander couldn't speak. His throat tightened. For a man who had faced ruthless boardrooms, hostile takeovers, and billion-dollar negotiations without flinching, this single moment nearly broke him. He turned away, pacing the small apartment. His polished shoes looked almost ridiculous against the cracked floor tiles. He thought of his own childhood. His parents had died when he was young, and he'd clawed his way up from nothing. That pain had forged him into the cold, calculating man he was today. But looking at these twins, he realized something terrifying. He saw himself in them. That same hunger. That same desperation. That same fight to survive. Only, unlike him, they had no one to guide them. He turned back, his voice unsteady but firm. "Girls, listen to me. How much is the medicine your mother needs?" The twins looked at each other, hesitant. Finally, one whispered, $300 a month. Alexander almost laughed, not at them, but at the cruel irony. For him, $300 was pocket change. He spent more on a single lunch. Without hesitation, he pulled out his wallet and handed them a thick wad of bills. "Here. This should cover more than a few months." The twins' eyes widened in shock. They shook their heads, pushing his hand back. "No, sir, we can't take that. Mom says we should earn what we need." Alexander froze again. These little girls, with nothing to their name, had more dignity and pride than most people he'd ever met in his billionaire circles. And that struck him harder than anything else. Quick pause. If you believe dignity is worth more than money, hit that like button right now. Let's see how many of you agree with these little girls' courage. Alexander crouched down, looking at the twins eye to eye. "Then let me help you, not by giving you money, but by giving you something better." The twins tilted their heads, confused. What do you mean, sir? Alexander smiled faintly for the first time that day. You'll see. But deep down, even he didn't fully know what he was about to do. He just knew one thing. He couldn't walk away. Not this time. Because maybe, just maybe, these twins weren't just going to change their lives. Maybe they were about to change his. That evening, Alexander sat in his luxury penthouse, staring out at the glittering skyline. He had everything, the money, the power, the influence. But for the first time in years, none of it felt satisfying. Instead, the only image in his mind was of two little girls in threadbare dresses, clutching their lemonade cups, smiling despite their pain. He realized something. He wasn't just moved by them. He was changed by them. The next morning, the twins went back to their lemonade stand. But something was different. Instead of just a few passers-by, there was a huge crowd. People holding cameras, curious onlookers, and even news reporters. What's happening? One twin whispered nervously. Then a sleek black car pulled up. Out stepped Alexander, in a crisp suit, but this time, his expression wasn't cold or businesslike. It was determined. He approached the twins with a warm smile. Girls, today, your lemonade stand is about to become something much bigger. Alexander revealed his plan. He had purchased a small shop on the corner of the street, one he owned all along but had left empty. And now, he was giving it to the twins. This will be your new lemonade shop, he said firmly. I'll cover the costs, the renovations, the equipment, everything. But you'll run it. You'll earn it, just like you wanted. The twins gasped, their eyes wide. Us? Own a shop? Yes, Alexander nodded. And not just a shop. I'll make sure your mother has the best medical treatment money can buy. No more struggling. No more hunger. From this day forward, you're safe. Later that day, when their mother heard the news, she wept uncontrollably. She grabbed Alexander's hands, her frail voice trembling. Why? Why are you doing this for us? Alexander's eyes softened. For a man known to never show weakness, a single tear slipped down his cheek. Because once, I was just like them. Hungry. Alone. Forgotten. And no one helped me. I swore I'd never feel that pain again. But seeing your daughters reminded me of who I used to be. They gave me back something I'd lost a long time ago. He paused, looking at the twins with pride. They gave me my heart back. Weeks passed, and the empty corner shop transformed into a beautiful little cafe called Twins Lemonade. The twins wore aprons too big for their small frames, but they stood proudly behind the counter, serving smiling customers. Business boomed. Not just because of Alexander's backing, but because the community had rallied around them. Their mother, healthier with proper treatment, sat by the window every day, watching her daughters with tears of joy. And Alexander? He visited often. Not as a billionaire investor, but as family. One evening, as the cafe buzzed with customers, the younger twin tugged at Alexander's sleeve. Sir, can we ask you something? Of course, Alexander replied, kneeling down. Do you think you could be like our second dad? She asked shyly. Alexander froze. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Then, his heart swelled in a way he hadn't felt in decades. With tears in his eyes, he hugged them both tightly. Yes. From now on, you'll never be alone again. The cafe erupted in applause from customers who had overheard. And in that moment, a billionaire didn't just save two little girls. Two little girls had saved a billionaire. So remember this. Sometimes the richest people aren't those with the most money. Sometimes, the richest are those with the biggest hearts. And as for Alexander and the twins, they proved that kindness can rewrite destinies, and that love is the greatest fortune of all.